red dot at the bottom, which is started.
Okay, I see that. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. We're going to start right away here at 11 o'clock sharp. This is Jim Campbell. I'm Statistics Committee Chair. Thank you for attending this webinar. Today's webinar, we're hoping to provide you with some information on Capex and Salary Survey programs that are part of the Statistics Program of CSIA. And the intent of these programs is to help you manage your business. We're going to encourage people to ask questions throughout this presentation. You'll notice on your screen that there's a chat section and a Q&A section. Please use the Q&A section for that, and we'll pay attention to what's being typed in there. So let me say a few words about Software Toolbox, our host here. These are the people that help with the monthly webinars for CSIA. They are a partner member of CSIA. Software Toolbox helps systems integrators lower risk on their projects that involve software. They have a unique mix of off-the-shelf software products and a rapid response tech support group that will help minimize need for custom code and lower your startup risk. And for our presentation today, we have a number of people talking here, myself obviously, and we have two other presenters, Chris Smith from iLumen and Don Roberts from Exotech. Give you a little background on both of these people. I'm sure most of you know Don. He's been with Exotech up in Canada for many years as helping us with the systems integration business and business consulting for CSIA. Obviously, he's a major part of our certification program as well as an auditor. So he's been involved with CSIA very heavily since the late 1990s. Don gets to see companies all over the world, which is always useful to share notes with him on that. If you've not done that personally, I'm sure he would welcome that. And he works directly with owners and senior management to help facilitate strategic planning and just general business planning. He's been involved with automation for a long time and used to own an integration company himself. And Chris Smith, who's going to speak next, he manages iLumen's professional service team. Chris has had experience and knowledge at iLumen customizing the platform, and it's tailored to our customer-specific needs. So iLumen's been a company that's been around for a while, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in the next couple slides. But essentially, they help companies manage and track financial statistical data. Chris has been with iLumen for about 4 years now. He started out as a support analyst, and now, like I say, is helping manage this program with us. Obviously a glutton for education, because not only to get one bachelor's degree in accounting, but then he decided to go and get another one in economics too. So good for you, Chris. And clearly, Chris is ideal for helping us do this financial management part of CSIA Statistics Program because he has a background in it. So what are we going to talk about today? I just threw up a quick agenda slide. I want to make sure that we give a quick overview of where the statistics program is right now and our goals. Then we're going to have Chris talk on the updates that we've been working on with iLumen for the interface to the Capex and Salary Survey. And then finally, Don's going to take over and talk about the importance of some of the key Capex parameters. Okay, so statistics program, what's it all about? I presume several of the people that are on the conference call today here know about the statistics program, but for sure, many probably don't know that it has existed from the start of CSA. It's been around basically forever. It started out as a rather basic set of KPIs, key performance indicators, but over the years grew to the point where there was a tremendous amount of data that was being collected by participants. And the analysis and reporting of that data became very complex. and it was a challenge to manage it well. About 4 years ago, we got involved with iLumen to help essentially tame that process, and we were able to get them to help us minimize the amount of effort to get the data in, and also to help people look at the data through the reporting, which we'll talk about shortly. But iLumen, I can say, is tremendously committed to making this program a success. It's been a real joy working with them as we listen to people's feedback on how to do this better. So I'm really pleased that we have them involved. Some of the goals that we have in the statistics program, certainly the major goal is to help people understand how to make good financial and business decisions. Obviously, we do that through collecting data on individuals and companies, and also share that through the statistical analysis that we produce through the reports. But we also have a tremendous goal of trying to reduce the quote-unquote friction in entering the data and reviewing the reports. I mean, one of the challenges that we had prior to iLumen is that it was just difficult for people to digest the information as well as getting it into the system. It was very hand and labor intensive. So we're trying to make that as easy as possible for all of us being busy running our own businesses. So that's definitely a goal of ours. And then obviously, very importantly, we're very interested in trying to make sure we collect the appropriate data for people, not only because they don't need to see some information that's going to be important to them for their daily businesses, but we also want to give them value in terms of understanding how to interpret the data as well. So Don's going to be talking a little bit more about that as well. So that's what the statistics program goals are. I encourage everyone during the course of this presentation to give some feedback as we go forward. And at the end of this, we'll have some surveys and questions, which I will prompt people about when we're all done. But for this point in time now, we'll just turn it over to Chris. And just remember, Chris is talking about iLumen initially and what he's been doing relative to interfacing and reporting. And then after that, we'll go to Don to talk about some of the individual Capex statistics. So, Chris, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Jim, and thank you for everyone for joining. I know, everyone's really busy, so thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. We're excited. If you're a new person to Capex, have never seen us before, you're in for a lot of new features. And if you're a current Capex member, you're going to see some new things today too. So we're really excited about the 2 new features we're going to roll out, but let's just go ahead and get into it. A lot of y'all are familiar with this website, but this is how you log in. Just 3-credential login. You have your separate URL, and it takes you basically to the system. Jim was saying, how easy it is to upload data, and we're going to go through that. We're going to go through entering the salary survey very quickly and running reports, and we're going to dive right into the new reports that we've been working on the last couple months. So to upload data is very simple. You just go to My Data, select the period you want to upload to, and you can see I already have data through 4th quarter of this year. But I'm going to go ahead and re-upload the data. It was the same process either way, if it's new data or re-uploading. But you simply just export your trial balance from the system, and it obviously trial balance ready. You just copy and paste it directly into the window, or you can browse for it if you save it off onto your desktop or your computer. And once you copy it in there, it looks a little scrambled, but the system will read it. It knows what it is. You simply push upload, and that's it. Your data is in the system now. There is a one-time mapping process, where you just link your chart of accounts to the standard chart of accounts we created for CSIA. Like I said, it's one time. Depending on how many accounts you have, it takes about 20 minutes or so. But once you do that, it sends your data off and it processes immediately. There's one more step in the quarterly uploads, and that's the key metrics, or the non-financial data. And this data is used throughout the system in calculations and benchmarking, and is very, very helpful and useful information once you take the time to enter the data. If you ever have any questions about it, you can see there's help features here, or there's help links, so you can kind of just mouse over and see what's going on. But you just enter your data, and you scroll down and hit Save and Calculate. Very simple. So On a quarterly basis, this may take you, 10, 15 minutes to collect the data, collect the trial balance, upload the data. So it's a very simple process. We're also going to talk about the new salary survey that we have implemented, and some of you are familiar with that, some of you may not be, but we're going to go ahead and just go straight to it. If you see this tab up here, it's its own standalone tab. And you simply come to it. Right now we only have one survey available, but you just click on the survey, and it pulls a bunch of data in. It's pulling your data from last year if you entered it last year. It's pulling all the metrics that can be entered. And it kind of gives you a nice little, telling you what it's doing along the way. But once it comes up, you can see it's very simple, just like the key metric screen. You have your positions as well as your total and base salary numbers. Once again, over any of the positions, you can mouse over the question mark and you kind of see an explanation of what the position is. So if you have any questions of what you're entering it for, you can do so. And once again, you simply go through, enter the data. All the way down, we have administrative and support staff, sales staff, technical staff. And at the very bottom, we do have a place where you can enter the average increase in your salaries. But once you're done entering all the data, you just scroll back up to the top and you hit Save and Recalculate, or you can save and recalculate and it'll automatically save your data at that point, or if you're done, you can hit Save and Exit. And it's going to ask you two things. It'll say, do you want to send a confirmation that you're done? Yes. And you can also click to run a validation report, which what that does is it just runs the data that you just entered and sends you an email with the data so you can basically just verify everything's correct. Once you're done, you hit Exit. And that's it. The data's saved. It's on its way. It's going to the database, and it's making the report available. It's making the data ready for the report. And you can see, just like that, it's done. So the salary survey will take you a little longer than 15 or 20 minutes, but it's only once a year. And once you pull the data, entering it is very easy. It's just maybe pulling the data that's a little time-consuming, but it's very simple for once a year. Not a problem at all. Once you have the data in the system, running reports is just as easy. You just click on the Reports tab, and you see you have a few different report options. There's been 2 reports that have been tailored to CSIA, and we have some generic, or 3 reports, I'm sorry, and then we have some generic reports too that have been found to be useful by the members. So take a look at those if you like, but the 2 reports we're going to focus on are the Salary Survey Report and the Capex Benchmark Report. To generate either of them, you just click on the report icon. It pops up a window. Tells you a brief description of it, and you just click Generate Now. That simple. It tells you the report's being generated. It may take a few minutes. Not a problem, because what I'm going to show you next is that it emails you once the report's done, so you don't have to sit here and wait. You click Generate, log out, you'll get an email within 5 minutes with a link to download the report. Same thing with the salary survey. Click on the salary survey, generate. Once the report's ready for you to review, it'll send you an email, so you don't have to sit here and wait for it. And that email I'm speaking of, it looks like this. I generated this earlier. You can see it just tells you your company name. It says the report's available to download. You simply just click the link. It takes you this quick little page where it just verifies that you're the actual user and makes you put in your password. So once you put in your password, and you do have to have the correct password. It will tell you if you don't, you just click Open the Report, and the report pops up on your desktop. Very simple process. Well, I already have a couple reports open, so let's go ahead and take a look at those. We'll start with the Capex report first. I'm going to go ahead and close that trial balance I had open. Oh, that's the salary survey. We'll start with the Capex report, and this is going to be new to everyone. No one has seen this yet. We completely redid the Capex report. We've received a lot of great feedback from members, and one-on-one phone calls with members saying, what would you like to see? What's hard to read in the old report? And we've taken all that feedback and we've come up with this new report that we think the users are going to love. You get basically this cover sheet. So a lot of people say, the report's nice, but I really can't present it to a board because it doesn't look like a formal presentation. Well, now it's a little more formal. It's not. Some people might want to add more, but it's all definitely customizable. But all of our pages are print friendly. So when you print it, it's nice presentation, all landscape view. We also had a lot of people say, well, we like the report, but we don't know if the report's kind of ready for us yet. Are there enough companies to compare our data against? Are we uploading enough data to catch up to the peer group? Well, now we have this summary page. It tells you exactly what quarter you've uploaded to, exactly what quarter the peer group's ready for, and it gives you a check or X. And the X is there, it'll tell you why, because in this little box it'll say either, hey, your data is behind the peer group, please go upload your most recent data, rerun the report. Or it's going to say, you're ahead of the companies, please check back in about a week or two, let more companies upload data and the peer data will be ready. So it's completely, it just gives you feedback instantly if the report's ready for you to view. Then once you get into it, we've even simplified this. Before, the previous graphs were kind of, the previous Capex numbers would know there's two different graphs you have to look at, and it was kind of tricky to determine what you're looking at, but now it's just very straightforward and simple. You have your quarters, your peer data and the bars for 8 quarters straight, and you have your company data. And you can see the company line goes through the line graph as a company. Then down here, you also have a table for the accountants who likes to see the actual numbers instead of the graphs. We have the numbers down here as well. It also gives you the participation levels for each metric. Any of these graphs can be customized by the user. So we've defaulted to what we thought were the most useful metrics for users to look at, but you can chart on 8 consecutive quarters any of these metrics right here. And once again, when you print this page, it prints one graph per page, but very nice, similar layout to the cover page. So if you want, you can print a page, come here, change the title. You can see it's processing. There's a lot of data. Change the title and then print the page again. So you can print. There's 5 graphs, but you can print up to, I think there's 20 metrics available. So you can print up to 20 different pages if you like. Moving on, we have the balance sheet and income statement. And this just gives you your company for the last 2 years and the trailing 12 months. And it turns out right now that the trailing 12 months just happens to be the 4th quarter of 2012. So it's actually 3 annual periods. But once we get the 1st quarter of this year uploaded, it'll roll over to the trailing 12 months for the 1st quarter of this year. But you just get an income statement and balance sheet view. And then for those who would like to see this in more common size instead of the actual numbers, we have a common size view as well, which just takes, if you're looking at revenue, it just takes the cost of revenue divided by total revenue. So 51% of your revenue went to the cost of sales. Same thing for the balance sheet, so it divides by total assets and total liabilities and equity, which should be equal. So I'm quickly going through this, so we're on a time schedule here, but these reports will be available immediately following the webinar, so if you'd like to look through them more, please log in and download them after the webinar. We also have the annual and TTM, so before we have the quarterly trends down here, well, we have annual versus trailing 12 months, which once again happens to be 3 consecutive years, but like the quarterly trends, all of these graphs are customizable for what the user wants to see. So you have the graphs up here, and then below, you have the table showing the actual numbers as well. And all of the data that's available in these graphs are in the table, so you can see the actual numbers for all the metrics. One of the new additions to the report, so these pages I've showed you so far were all available in the old report that has been updated. Some of the new features are users say we want to see how we rank against other users. So we've added a ranking page with what we felt like were the 3 best metrics to rank someone against. So you can see labor multiplier, value added divided by employees, and net profit as a percentage of revenue. And you can see, based off the number of participants that uploaded data, you rank, as labor multiplier, this company ranks the best. They're 1 out of 10. The reason there's 10 here and 6 here is because not everyone uploads their key metrics for employees. So we do a count based off each metric, how many available data points we have per metric. So here's a ranking sheet. This updates each quarter. So once you upload the 1st quarter of 2013, this will update itself. And finally, the last thing we added was individual trends. And this doesn't use any benchmarking data. This is simply the company and the company alone. But it gives you an idea of how your data is trended over time. And the nice part about this is it kind of gives you an idea of how the metrics calculated, which we always hear, users always want to know, well, how's that calculated? It's a great number, but I want to know exactly how it's calculated. Well, now you know. It also gives you an interpretation of what the data means. So if your data is trended upwards like it is now, The interpretation gives you a trend of what it means to go upwards, and same thing for a downward variance. If your data is trended downward, the interpretation will change. Just like any of our other graphs within this report, these graphs are customizable as well. We're not going to leave these out, so we can switch to days payable, let it process. Since there is a lot of data, it takes about a couple seconds to process. But you can see it swapped out my calculations and it swapped out my interpretation. Then we also left a place here for notes, because a lot of times we hear, well, that's great, you know, that's great information. My accountant came by and we went over the information, but 2 weeks later, I was looking at the report again. I had no idea what I was looking at again. So this is a place for you to just sit down, write notes out, type notes out, whatever you want to do. You know, if you want to type some notes to your boss, type some notes in there, send the page to the boss. You know, you can do anything with this section right here. And just like any of our other pages, it's nice and print friendly. And then finally, the last page is just a kind of a definition of how a description of the metrics in the report and kind of how they're used. And you know, some of the descriptions give what the typical range was. You see for a label multiplier, it tells you the typical range for system integrators. So a lot of useful information on this page as well. So that's the Capex report. And like I said, immediately following this webinar, this report will be available to all users. So I do encourage you, if you're a current member, to log in and download the report as soon as the meeting's over with, and wait for that email to come. We're going to go ahead and move on to the salary survey. I'm going to close this out. And the salary survey, like I said, is done on an annual basis. So what it does is just gives your company information for the base, which is blue, and totals red, against the average and different quartiles for the peers. And it does so all the way down. So you can see that not all companies enter data for each position. That's okay, not a problem at all. You enter data for positions you have or positions you can easily track. So just going on down, we're looking at it. You can see the participation rate for each metric. The nice part about this is, as well, is you can filter it based off a region. So right now it's filtered to all regions across the states and international. So we're going to let's just look at the Northeast. You can see how the bars and the numbers change. I'll do that one more time so we can look. So right now the average is 155. If I switch to Midwest, it goes down to 129. So you can kind of see how your salaries compare against different regions of the country. If you're interested to know what the regions are, there's this page right here that defines them for you. And then, of course, what's not defined on this is international, but anything outside of the states. And I do believe we have a good number of international, decent numbers. So we have about 5 or 6 members that are uploading data for international. So it is a possibility to get international numbers as well. But I think that's about all I have. Once again, if you have any questions about the reports following the meeting, you saw on the Capex report, it just say contact us. We're more than welcome to help you out with any questions you have or any issues you may be having with the reports. Please contact us. We're always available for you. So thank you again for attending the meeting, and I guess let's go ahead and switch over to Don.
Thanks, Chris. Let me get my slides up here. Very good. You'll probably notice, any of those people that have used the Capex, you'll notice that there has been a lot of work that's been done, and thanks a lot, Chris, for that. We just keep moving, making it easier and easier to get data in, and now the question I get asked the most is, okay, so I got the data in there. How do I know whether or not I'm winning? What am I going to do with all that data? So I'm going to look at 3 different areas here quickly in the about 25 minutes that I've got here for presentation. And I'm going to kind of do it in the reverse order that Chris did. So I want to take a look first at the trending information. So out of all of that information that's collected in Capex and all of the different trends that you can generate, I'm going to give you some idea of the trends that I recommend, and also the ones that I see a lot of the successful companies looking at. And then towards the end, I'll spend one slide on looking at things that you should check at least quarterly. So these are more benchmarks. So how do you compare your company against what's going on in the industry, and why would that be interesting? and the sorts of things you'd look at on a quarterly basis. And then finally, the annual review. So this is how is the industry doing as a whole? How am I doing? I'm getting ready to create my budgets and do my strategic planning. So what are some of the things that I should look at when I'm doing that? So I'll give you an idea of just a handful of individual reports that you're going to want to look at, or KPIs you're going to want to look at. Now I'm going to give you the answers right off the bat, just to so that if I talk too long on the introduction, I can just quit here. You see. So there's 5 trends that I think you should monitor. Now these are trends that are really focused internally on your company, and Chris kind of pointed to that part on the report. Trends that you just want to compare quarter over quarter your individual performance and look for any variance that could be indications of problems in the company. And the 5 trends that I think are the best to look at, and I kind of cheat a little bit here because I've got utilization, and I really like to look at utilization not just based on hours, but utilization based on dollars. And I'll explain each one of these in a little bit more detail. And then, of course, a labor multiplier, pretty standard one for a professional services organization. How much work do we actually have in the company? What's our backlog in terms of days? How long can we survive without selling something? And then day sales outstanding, very traditional business metric. How much are we financing our customers? And then some form of liquidity trend. So are we using up all of our cash, or do we have enough cash to actually run the business? So let me get into these in a little bit more detail. Utilization based on dollars. I see some of the sort of leading companies really focusing in on this and using this as a comparison to utilization based on hours. So how's it calculated? So basically what we're looking at here is taking all of the labor cost that is charged to jobs and dividing that by the total labor cost paid by the company. Now, this is all-inclusive. So this is not just the direct employees, but the overhead employees as well. And with this one metric, if you track this and you watch any trends, it can point to a lot of different areas in the company where things could have a problem. So I call it a good measure of the quality of the utilization. So when I'm looking at hours of utilization, it's probably the most important metric to keep an eye on. But I can't really get a good sense of the quality of that utilization. So if I add on top of that this dollars-based utilization, I get a better sense of the quality. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. If our dollar utilization is staying steady, so if I look at that trend and that's staying steady, but our hours utilization is decreasing, and probably what's going on is we're having more senior people in our organization billing time, and their costs are a little bit higher, so we're seeing more cost being utilized. And that may be intentional, or it may be indicative of a problem. We may not even have the junior people on staff, so we're not getting the proper leverage. On the other hand, if we see hours of utilization staying steady and our dollar utilization decreasing, then that means that what we probably have is a lot more of the junior people putting in those billable hours. And that could be a good thing, but if we don't have labor rates that can translate the junior people into some good revenue, we could end up impacting our profitability. So those are some of the things that you can see by tracking these two different types of utilization. If both utilizations are going down, then obviously you don't have enough work. If both utilizations are going up, then that's probably a good thing. Mention a little bit as well the concept that this is strictly looking at costs. So you could have a trend on your cost utilization or your labor utilization that may give you some concern, and you may be covering that with revenue, increasing your rates, for instance. So I've seen companies where it didn't look like they were having too much of a problem because their revenue was staying up, and it turned out that, yeah, your revenue was staying up, but you were using the wrong kinds of people to generate that revenue. So you get a much better sense of it by looking at this number. Let me skip to the next big thing to trend, and that is labor multiplier. How do I translate that previous slide of utilization of cost into my top line or my revenue? Very simply calculated, it's the billed labor revenue over the cost of labor to generate that revenue. This is a metric that's used in most professional services organizations. A typical target that you're going to see is somewhere around a labor multiplier of 3. It's one of the ones that you can easily trend through Capex. I see systems integration companies running, anywhere like 2.5 to sub 4 or close to 4, and that's kind of the typical range. If your labor multiplier is much higher than that, then you might have an issue with underpaying your staff, and you might end up with some staff turnover. The labor multiplier is influenced by a number of things, significantly influenced. One of them is the mix of staff. So you could have a lot of senior people in the organization, which means your costs are going to go up and may not be able to get the labor revenue for that. And so your labor multiplier will start to come down. So it's a really good one to watch for those kinds of trends. The other thing is...
Don?
Yes?
This is Jim. We got a question come in here about what costs are included in cost of labor.
All of these metrics that I'm using are metrics that are pulled from the Capex report. So the cost of labor is all of the costs. So you've got salary, you've got benefits, insurance, and those sorts of things. So again, you can go back to this is a metric that's a standard one on the Capex and pull it right off of that report. It's a good one to trend as well, primarily because you will see how your company performs. So if for instance, you were off on how you're calculating your cost, it's still the trend that is important as long as you're consistent the way you do that. When I get to the next group of slides where you're talking about benchmarking, then you want the consistency. Do you account for support staff and overhead costs within this? This is the just above, so this is the direct side of it. So it's how much cost did I incur to generate that revenue. People track this on a project-by-project basis. They'll track it on a client-by-client basis. They'll track it on a overall company basis. So it's really your direct cost that went into the project, not your administrative staff on this one, or support staff. The other thing that really influences this a lot is the accuracy of your estimating or your quoting. So if you're in a fixed bid environment, obviously if you underbid on a project, your labor multiplier will take a real hit, and you're going to recognize less revenue per hour spent on a project. So this one will, when you see these trends, will cause you to look back at a number of different areas within the company. Another thing that we've seen people be able to do with trending the labor multiplier is they kind of can see when the backlog gets a little bit low. So if there's not a lot of, if people don't perceive that there's a lot of work in the company, then it's amazing how the hours kind of just fill that gap. So you might see your labor multiplier trending down, and that could be that the employees have the perception that, there's not a lot of work, I better stretch this out a little bit. So lots of things can lead to what's changing the trend on this one. So I moved from sort of the cost, how that cost generates revenue, and I mentioned the concept of backlog. Another really important thing that I see companies tracking is backlog in days. This is calculated by your total backlog. In other words, all the orders that you have on the books that you're for projects that you're currently working on and the work that you haven't done yet, divided by your annualized revenue multiplied by 365 to put it in days. This is basically a measure of how long can we work before we run out of projects. If we don't sell another thing, how much breathing room do we have here? So absolutely a great metric to watch. You should be watching this not quarterly, but you really should be looking at this on a fairly regular basis, monthly type of thing. But it's a difficult one to benchmark against industry because the company specifics are very important to how this thing works. So for instance, if you're the kind of company that gets a lot of smaller contracts, say $50,000 jobs, then your days of backlog might be 30 days and you're really comfortable with that because you have a very high churn. If on the other hand you're a company that has very large projects, multi-million-dollar projects or projects that run a year, year and a half, 2 years, and you have a backlog of 6 months, that's where you start to get comfortable. So it's very dependent on the type of business you're doing, so it makes it a little bit less appealing for benchmark against industry. But I will explain a little bit later on in the presentation why you still want to look at it as a benchmark. The other thing that you should watch for in this, and a complication to this, is the labor material mix. Unfortunately, not many integrators report revenue separated out by labor revenue and material revenue. And ideally what you'd want to look at for backlog days is something that says how many hours of backlog or dollars of backlog for labor do I have versus how much over my labor revenue, and calculate just your labor backlog. How do you define annualized revenue? So yeah, the annualized revenue is just what's your forecasted revenue for that year. And as I was saying, not many integrators are able to separate that out as a labor revenue separate from a materials revenue, separate from maybe equipment or expenses revenue. So it's a good surrogate, just total backlog over annualized revenue. The challenge is if your labor material mix changes, that will impact this backlog in a significant way. Another thing to watch out for on backlogs is whether or not you can eat it. If you have, let's say it's January and you got this great looking backlog, lots of dollars tied up in your backlog, but all of those dollars are tied up in annual maintenance contracts. You actually can't do the work until months down the road. Or if you're on a project and the customer is in control of the schedule, so you got a great backlog, but you can't actually work on it. So when you're looking at backlog, don't just take a look at that trend and say, okay, yeah, we're good. Make sure that the backlog hasn't changed in the nature of the backlog. And again, it's something that you will get used to as you start to use this trend more and more. What would be a typical mix ratio, labor material? There isn't. Yeah, I've seen integrators that run 60-40 labor material. I've seen integrators that are 90% labor and 10% material. I can't really say that there is a typical. It does tend to be a little bit more industry specific, but there isn't a typical one for integrators. So again, I'm talking about trends that you want to be looking at for your company. Let's move to, so we've got enough work, we've got people working on good utilization. Are we actually getting paid? So the next thing that you should be trending, this is a very standard KPI, day sales outstanding, accounts receivable over annualized revenue times 365. It's basically a measure of how quickly do my customers pay. And I'll tell you that this is one that most companies will monitor, and you absolutely want to trend. It's a very good one also to benchmark. I've heard a lot of people say, nah, our customers don't pay that fast, but other people in the exact same industry, in other words, your competitors, are getting paid quicker. Good. It's a very good one to watch for trends. If your day sales outstanding are going up, that means that you're basically financing your customers. If you need cash, working really hard on driving DSO down is the quickest way to get cash. Typically, what we're seeing for the industry is, 65 days is a pretty typical DSO. If you're, if there's some of you guys on here that are water, wastewater, yeah, I understand that some of those where you're working through a contractor can tend to be longer, and some of them can be out 90, even 120 days. And then the last trend that I recommend that you watch, these are my 5 top trends, is days cash and cash equivalents. I often get asked how much money, what working capital do we need to have in the company. So here's a KPI that you can get straight out of Capex. Cash and liquid assets divided by annualized accounts payable, and including payroll. How much money do I use? How much do I have available? Everybody's heard the phrase cash is king. There's a lot of examples of integrators that are very good companies that run a very good project, but don't manage their cash, and as a consequence can get in a lot of trouble. So you really want to know if you have enough cash in the company. This is nice because as you grow, this is a percentage. It's in days, so it doesn't matter what your revenue is. You can still monitor this. You can compare yourself against other companies as well because it's kind of revenue independent. Keep in mind that you need enough cash in the company to finance growth. So if you've got a high growth company, you may want to make sure that you've got more cash in-house, primarily because you're financing that AR that I mentioned in the previous slide. Those are my 5 top trends that I recommend that you look at and that you cover off as on at least a quarterly basis. If you can do it more frequently, that'd be great. Facilities are there in Capex to be able to come up with what those are. Let me move on to the next section, which is things that I think you should look at on a quarterly basis. And these are, so I'm switching from benchmarking against myself or the trends I have internally to benchmarking against the industry. What should I be looking at that's going on out there? Utilization is whichever way you want to look at it, whether that's dollar utilization or whether that's a hours-based utilization, is a good one to benchmark. Is the industry in general, is the market space staying pretty solid, or is it is it softening up? The other thing about utilization, if it gets too high, you know that there's going to be competition for your resources. So something you want to look at beyond the borders of your own company. We want to see what's going on in the industry because it could create some different scenarios for it. Labor multiplier, similarly, good one to benchmark, relatively standard across the industry. And the other thing is it will give you a sense of whether or not there's some market influence that's going on. People are tightening up on their spending and things of that nature. Backlog in days, I talked a little bit about that and some of the complexities that come in, but it's still worth taking a look at how the industry as a whole is doing. If your backlog is really solid and the rest of the industry is starting to drop off, then maybe you're fortunate enough to have landed some good orders, but you can expect to see some downturn a little bit later on. So you kind of want to get that heads up. If you consistently are staying ahead of the competition, then that's fine. Another good quarterly benchmark is just quick ratio liquidity of the company. So how much cash do I have in? You can kind of get a sense too by benchmarking this the confidence level that your competition has. So if they have a really high quick ratio, then there may be less confidence in the industry. So it gives you a good sense of how others are behaving. And I mentioned this before, labor material mix, very, very critical thing to keep an eye on internally, and also externally. what we see happen quite often is as the economy softens, companies will, your customers, will stop buying material from you. They'll move out of the capital projects and into more an expense-based MRO type of environment, and that will have an impact on material. So because most companies build their budgets and everything like that with an assumed labor material mix, you really want to keep an eye on this. Jim, question about participation. Yeah, okay, Jim's got that one. Good. Let me move to my last slide here, and that is...
Don.
Yes, Jim.
So there was another question that came in actually through the chat box. Question is, what is a typical target for days cash equivalent?
I can't give you a typical target for days cash equivalent because it depends dramatically on the company. It depends on how quickly you can turn cash in too. So I don't really have a good handle for that. But you obviously want to make sure that you've got payroll covered and your ability to buy material. One of the challenges with this is you see some integrators that may be running 60% material, so they have some very, very high material content. And I realize that metric will iron that out, but you want to have a couple months of coverage for sure. Another thing that people will look at is working capital related to revenue. And I've seen numbers where people are saying, yeah, we probably need to have between 10 and 15% of revenue available as working capital. So a couple of metrics that you can look at there. The key thing is to keep an eye on what you need to run your business. As I go through all of those trends, it becomes a little bit more specific to your way of running business. Let me jump onto annual budget, annual benchmarks. I'm cognizant of the time here, so Jim, I see some questions running through there. I'm hoping you're grabbing them and just pointing me to the ones that I need to address. So annually, I would say that there are things that you want to look at Capex for, and this is really where you're lining up with what's going on in the industry. So using this data more for creation of budgets and creation of doing your strategic planning. Year-over-year revenue growth is a great one for that. At what rate are you growing? Are you growing faster than the industry, faster than your competition? Has there been a significant change in the year-over-year revenue growth? Nice thing about this is it's independent of the size of the company, so you don't have to worry about whether you're comparing against, if you're a $5 million company comparing against a $10 or a $15 million company, it's a percentage, so it's independent of that. And could be a great early indicator if you're seeing everybody else starting to slow down. There may be some possibility that you're going to slow down as well. Or conversely, if you're seeing everybody else pick up and you're not, then you're probably going to want to figure out why. Similarly, working capital turnover, how much cash are people keeping in the company? If there's a sense that the economy's doing real well, we're continuing to grow, we're continuing to produce cash, you might see less working capital left in the company. If there's a sense that companies need to have a little nest egg for a rainy day, much like what you're seeing a lot of the manufacturers doing right now, there's a lot of cash that's being kept available in the company. Key component that I get asked a lot is, take a look at the income statement and where do the costs split out throughout that. So I would say on at least an annual basis, taking a look at things like administrative expenses as a percentage of revenue, what should that be? And this one ranges significantly. You'll see it range from, say, 7%, 8% up to 15 to 20%. Now, some of that is due to the fact that the company is gearing up for the next phase of growth. So there may be, built a little bit more infrastructure than they need for that size because they're gearing up for it. Others, maybe you're just overstaffed on the administrative side. So, and similarly, the next one, overhead cost as a percentage against employees. I think that that's one that gives you a sense of how efficiently you run your business relative to others. And probably the most popular is average salary per employee. Take a look at it through Capex, but also a strong encouragement to look at the salary survey tool that's available. I very quickly ran through some very interesting KPIs. I understand that some of these things are maybe new to you. There's lots of questions about, well, geez, what actually goes into those numbers? If anybody wants to talk to me about them, here's my contact information, and I'd be happy to help you out with that. Also, if you want to set me up as a user, I can go in and look at your specific numbers and say, okay, here's the areas where either I think your data differs from others, or you may want to focus in on a particular problem. And Jim, I think with that, I'm going to pass the ball back to you.
Okay, thanks, Don. So shortly we will have some surveys that will show up in the window on the right side of your screen. And I encourage you all to take a look at those as soon as Monica can get those up there. While we're waiting for those, I just wanted to encourage people to submit some questions in the Q&A box, any feedback that you might have about this program. And not only about this particular webinar, but seriously, we are looking for trying to make this a valuable program for all the participants, and any sort of feedback that you can give us to make it better is welcome. I mentioned earlier that the Statistics Committee's mission is to help boost participation in this program, and the salary survey is one of them. The Capex obviously is another. We've had some conversations with people about different types of questions they might want to have us ask as part of these surveys, and encourage people to, let us know about those, either through Connected Community, or you can email me directly, or Don as well too, obviously. Would like you guys to encourage you to click the surveys. There's about a minute left on this thing that we can display it. So last thing I'll mention before I turn it over to Bob for the wrap-up is that obviously it's very, very important for these surveys to have many companies participating, because of the fact that obviously these are statistics programs, and the more people and more data we have in there, the better. So if you haven't joined already, obviously contact CSIA for details about joining up, and we'd like to encourage you to do that, obviously. So Statistics Committee will be reaching out to participants and to better understand sort of a customer satisfaction and gather suggestions, and we will potentially reach out to many of you on this call. So
Fill out the poll.
Yeah, it looks like the poll got closed.
Yeah,
interesting.
Okay.
It is
Jim.
open again. Okay. Yes,
Jim, I like this. And this is Chris, by the way, with iLumen. I kept mentioning quarterly uploads, but I heard Don say that he mentioned a couple of great metrics to track on a monthly basis. Well, the system allows you to track any metric on a monthly basis as well, but the report's just built on a quarterly basis. So if there are those metrics you want to track on a monthly basis, the system can definitely do that through the use of the dashboards. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware that's a possibility as well. So.
Okay. And Chris, I'll kick off some of these questions as well too by asking, you use the term common size in the Capex report, and to me it looks like what I would call those as normalized values, normalized by top line revenue. Is that the equivalent that you're talking about?
Yeah, and top line, for the income statement it would be top line revenue, and then for the balance sheet it would be assets or liabilities and equity, which would be equal. So yeah, it's just interchangeable terms. We use common size in my office, but I've heard normalized as well. Same thing.
Yeah, thought that maybe it was perhaps an accounting term or something versus the engineering way of speaking. But anyway, okay, we have about 6 minutes left. Obviously, you guys can poke in some questions if you want. I know those people are starting to drop off here. Again, encourage you guys to reach out either through this forum or personally. Welcome to feedback. And so Don, sorry, not Don. Rob, I'll turn this thing over to you. And there's a slide that you need to speak about presented now, so have at it.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jim. This is Bob Lowe, Executive Director of CSIA. And to all the attendees, thank you very much for your participation. And my hope is that you have several takeaways that enable you to improve your company's performance through data, trends, and benchmarking that become available to you through Capex and the salary survey. So as Jim already said, I highly encourage you to take advantage of the program. It's not very expensive when you consider what you can gain from it. I mean, one good decision made from having spent a few $100s to participate in Capex is an excellent ROI. Jim, Chris, and Don, thank you very much for your contribution and of your time and your expertise. Your presentations were very insightful, and we wish the best for all of you. I want to say thanks again to our host and sponsor, John Weber, President of Software Toolbox, who was typically with us for the webinars but is not available today, and specifically today to Monica Anderson, John's assistant and technical advisor in regard to the webinar. So thank you very much, Monica. You've done well. And I want to encourage everyone to complete the survey that's going to come out after the webinar. It'll arrive in your inbox within the hour and literally takes 30 seconds to complete it. And it's just feedback for us to know how we're doing and enables continuous improvement. And there's also, you can also indicate any suggested topics that you have for future webinars. We're always open to those, and I collect those, and then hopefully when there appears to be enough demand for a given topic, we try to fill that need. So in closing, there are 3 items, as you can see on your screen, and they are the CSIA Executive Conference. I want to let you know that as of this Sunday, or actually Monday, the rates go up by $100. So the normal registration rate, you have just a few days left at that. And if you're not signed up or registered yet for the conference, I highly encourage you to do that. And if you do it before Sunday, then you will be getting in at the regular rate. And I encourage you also to send an executive or a business development person to the Sandler Sales Workshop, which is going to be Wednesday, May 1st, the day before the conference begins. That's the first time we've ever done this. The response has been very good so far, and so we encourage you to take advantage of that. And for our integrator members, on April 1st, we sent out our second survey, industry survey, that's sponsored by JP Morgan and CSIA, and this provides trends about the industry and other information. This is a partial survey. We do the full survey only in December, so this is very quick and easy to fill out and help CSIA fully understand how our industry is doing. And the survey results are made available to all of our members in spreadsheet form, but a complete report written by JP Morgan, which is very professional, typically about 40 pages, will only be provided to those who participate in the survey. So I encourage you to do that. It takes no more than 10 minutes to do it. So that's all I have, and I want to thank you all again, attendees and presenters, for all of your work, and again to Monica Anderson for leading us through this technically. Again, this is Bob Lowe, Executive Director, and thanks again to everyone, and goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Don, and Monica as well, too. It's been a pleasure. One thing I might mention, and Monica, you could potentially add details to this, is somebody asked about